Three spine-chilling true horror stories unveiling sinister secrets of a cursed spring as Sarah drove through the winding roads of Whispering Springs. Uneasy sensations prickled at the back of her neck. "Mom, what's that behind the trees?" Danny squinted, his voice trembling as an unnatural chill coursed through the air. Lily, hugging her stuffed bunny tightly, whispered, "I don't like it, Mommy." The sun dipped behind the thick canopy, casting eerie shadows that seemed to stretch and crawl. The scent of honeysuckle, usually sweet and comforting, now felt suffocating, thick with unspoken fears. Arriving at the cabin felt surreal, a picturesque place impossibly out of a storybook, yet an alien atmosphere clung to every corner. They settled in, excitement masking the tension. After a long week of juggling two jobs, Sarah craved this moment, her childhood refuge transformed into a promise to her children. Memories of laughter echoed louder than the unsettling whispers that brushed against her ears, urging her to dismiss them as mere figments of imagination. Danny's eyes widened suddenly. "Mom, I saw something. There's a figure back there." A playful curtain of dread unfurled, wrapping around her heart. But was it just Danny's burgeoning teenage paranoia? "You know it's just the woods playing tricks on you," she assured, though her own voice trembled ever so slightly. Shadows flickered around them, whispering secrets only half heard, sending ripples of anxiety through her mind. "Let's play a game," she proposed weakly, laughter dwindling as the night approached, and the weight around them thickened. It wasn't long before Lily startled awake, tears streaming down her cheeks. "The shadow people are watching me," she cried, her innocent fears melting Sarah's resolve. For a moment, a silence enveloped them, smothering their laughter and pushing it deep into the corners of the cabin. No more games. They clung to each other, hearts racing, as every creak of the floorboards seemed amplified in the quiet. The next day, desperate for answers, Sarah ventured into town with Danny and Lily. It was there that Mrs. Caldwell, the eccentric neighbor with twinkling eyes, ambushed them with tales of danger. "Whispering Springs holds dark secrets, dear," she mused, voice hushed as if the woods were listening. "People have disappeared. Legends speak of an entity guarding those cursed waters." Sarah felt her stomach drop, fear clawed at her throat as Mrs. Caldwell described rituals, threads of terror weaving through the community. "Be careful," she warned, eyes narrowing. "The spring has a way of knowing your secrets." As night crept in again, a darkness more sinister stirred outside. Words barely formed in Sarah's mouth as they tried to focus on a board game, a futile attempt to cast off the dread. But the air grew heavy, pressing against them like an unseen force. Whispers slithered through the cracks in the cabin, beckoning them with chilling urgency, twisting their laughter into a sinister choir that crawled down Sarah's spine. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Just then, a loud crash shattered the fragile calm. Panic set in like a creeping poison. They rushed to the windows, eyes wide and breath hitching, as shadows writhed just beyond the tree-line. Ghostly figures swirled, their forms blending with the darkness, lost souls begging for release. Trembling hands gripped Danny's shoulder as they sought an escape, yet the path back to their car twisted, thorns and roots erupting from the ground as if to ensnare them. The cursed spring echoed with a promise of hidden terrors. Were they too late to flee, or would they be trapped forever, hunted by the very secrets they sought to uncover? A heavy silence gripped the cabin, drowning out even the whispers that had haunted them moments before. The shadows outside seemed to pulse, their dark forms shifting like restless spirits eager to strike. Sarah felt an eerie compulsion to look outside, but a ghostly chill gripped her heart, reminding her of Mrs. Caldwell's ominous warnings. "Stay away from the spring," echoed in her mind. Mom Danny's voice broke through the tension, trembling with fear. "What do we do?" Desperation laced his tone, the youth in his face replaced by the terror of adulthood. A cold mist rolled through the windows, curling around the floor like ghostly fingers, and Sarah felt it seize her breath. Let us find the flashlights. Her attempt at calm felt like a brittle mask. They rummaged through drawers, the noise of clattering objects amplifying their panic. Lily clung to her side, eyes darting around the room, seeking solace in her mother's presence. Finally, the beam of light pierced the dark, casting long, wavering shadows in the corners of the cabin. I don't want to play anymore, Lily whispered, her voice barely a thread. Neither do I, Sarah muttered, fear knotting in her stomach as she illuminated the cabin's walls, showing a collage of past adventures now marred by present horror. The photographs seemed to watch them, and Sarah quickly swept the light away, focusing on the windows. Outside, dark shapes moved restlessly. Suddenly, another crash echoed through the cabin. A loud thud against the wooden structure sent them jumping backward. What was that? Danny shouted, clutching tight to his sister. I don't know, Sarah forced out, her heart racing. They crept towards the door that led to the back porch, their breath shallow and quick. The weight of dread pressed down like a physical force, suffocating them. Maybe it's just a raccoon or something, Danny whispered, words almost a prayer. But the truth twisted in Sarah's gut. A primal fear clawed at her as she turned the handle, a soft creaking noise cutting through the silence. Stepping outside, they were greeted by a profound darkness. The beam from the flashlight trembled, illuminating only the first few feet in front of them. Shadows danced along the edges of the forest like waiting monsters. Then she heard a soft, childlike giggle that sent ice slithering down her spine. Did you hear that? Lily whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, Danny cautiously nodded. Let us go back inside. No, wait. Sarah felt drawn toward the sound, as if invisible strings were tugging her along. Mom, Danny's voice cracked. We have to go? But before she could answer, a flash of movement caught the corner of her eye. A procession of flickering lights, floating just beyond the tree-line. They were Willow, the wisps, beckoning her into the engulfing darkness. Sarah's heart raced. She could feel something ancient stirring, a siren-esque call rising from the cursed earth. What if it's someone who needs help? She suggested, almost without reason. Danny and Lily looked terrified, but deep down, Sarah felt something tugging her instinct to obey. Without thinking, she took a step toward the trees. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, eerie and indistinct. It was a woman draped in mist, face obscured but her eyes burning like coals in the dark. Come play with us, her voice slithered through the air, a melody woven with malevolence. Mom, don't, Danny shouted, urgency carrying his voice. But the woman's gaze held Sarah frozen in place, an enigmatic promise of answers lurking beneath the terror. What do you want? Sarah stammered, fear clawing at her throat. Your secrets, they'll set you free. The woman's lips curled into a grotesque smile. Fear wrapped around Sarah, squeezing tighter, pulling her toward an abyss she couldn't resist. Then the lights began to flicker violently, oscillating between shadows and brilliance, revealing forms of lost souls. They pleaded, reaching out with translucent hands, faces warped in agony. The woods began to whisper again, louder, taunting. In that moment, clarity flooded her mind. Secrets? What had she done to draw this darkness here? She needed to break free, to escape these whispers and shadows, before they consumed her whole. But the question loomed. Could she ever leave, or was Whispering Springs destined to be their haunting ground? With a final surge of fear, she turned back toward her children, only to find the cabin around them beginning to shrink, closing in like a trap. Time twisted. Shadows pressed in, marking the end of their innocence and the beginning of a darkness yet to unfold. As they struggled against despair, a resounding crash erupted from the cabin, echoing in the stillness of the night. What awaited them inside? The secrets of the spring, or their own? Everything faded around them. Darkness enveloped them, and Sarah could barely make out Danny's frantic face as he turned to her, eyes wide with fear. Mom, we have to get inside. His voice trembled, shaking her from the trance that the hideous woman had cast over her. Mom. Lily's hands were clutching at her waist, nails digging in as if trying to anchor herself. But Sarah couldn't move. The woman's sinister promise lingered like a poisonous fog in her mind. Come play with us, words that felt like ropes tightening around her wrists. Shadows spiraled around her, whispers from the ethereal figures tugging at the edges of her sanity. No. Danny grabbed her arm, pulling hard, lifting her free from the hypnotic fog. She shook her head, breaking contact with the chilling gaze as terror flooded her veins once more. Run! She screamed the word, and it shattered the stillness, sending waves of energy through her body. Swiftly, they stumbled back toward the cabin, each step pursued by the echoes of lost souls and the distant giggles of children mocking their terror. The door slammed shut behind them, the wood rattling as if whatever lurked outside were trying to claw its way in. Sarah fumbled for the bolt, her fingers slick with sweat as she locked it tight. What was that thing? Danny gasped, his eyes darting toward the windows, half expecting to see the woman looming just beyond the glass. I don't know, Sarah managed, her voice ragged. But we can't stay here. As the mist swirled around the cabin, a low moan echoed through the walls. It wasn't coming from outside. It was inside, growing louder, almost vibrating in rhythm with her heartbeat. Mom, Lily whispered, her small voice echoing the deepening dread. Stay close, Sarah ordered, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. She could almost feel the shadows moving, breathing in the darkness, growing hungrier with every passing second. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as if the shadows themselves had a will of their own. The flashlights flickered, casting eerie shapes across the walls, and Sarah dreaded what would manifest next. Danny, check the windows, she urged, shoving aside the darkness that threatened to topple her thoughts. He hurried to obey, but with each scuff of his feet against the floorboards, an almost mocking rhythm began to rise in the air, a phantom echo of their movements. Mom, look! Danny turned, wild-eyed, shining the flashlight at a corner where shadows writhed like snakes. It took Sarah a moment to make sense of what she was seeing. A face so grotesque, twisted with sorrow and rage, materializing from the wall itself. A woman, a different woman, her mouth wide in a silent scream. Sudden understanding crashed over Sarah like ice water. The secrets, she whispered. It knows our secrets. A frantic rap on the door startled them, a sharp reminder of their reality. The eerie giggling began again, intertwining with the voice of the trapped soul, whispering, pleading. Let me out. Get away from there, Sarah yelled, yanking Danny back by the collar, just as the door rattled violently, pushing against its frame as if something on the other side was desperate to get in. Lily began to shake, clutching her mother's leg. They had to act, but panic was a vice around her chest. What do we do? The spring, we need to go to the spring. The thought spilled out of her, without reason, an instinctive urge that clawed at her. The very place they'd been told to avoid was calling them like a moth to flame. But there was no time to hesitate. The ground beneath them trembled, and a dark shadow pooled in the center of the room, expanding like a gaping maw. Now, Sarah shouted. She grabbed Lily's hand, and in a whirlwind of desperate need and raw fear, they burst through the cabin door, running headlong into the darkness of the woods, intent on facing the very origin of their torment. Just beyond the line of trees lay the hazy outline of the spring, a haunting light flickering in the distance like a beacon of doom. What awaited them, their salvation, or the final unveiling of their darkest secrets? The woods shivered around them, whispering secrets of their own as they took their first steps toward the unknown. With every heartbeat, something sinister stirred, promising that this night was far from over. Branches cracked underfoot as Sarah urged Lily and Danny deeper into the woods. The chill of the night clung to them, wrapping around their bodies like an icy vice. But they pressed on, the flickering light from the spring drawing them in. It pulsed with an invitation that felt both dreadful and alluring, like the sinister woman's promise echoing in their minds. Stay close, she warned again, her voice almost lost amidst the rustling leaves. The giggling had faded to mere whispers, but the echoes of despair still lingered, brushing against their skin like a cold hand. Danny, who had been at the forefront of the flight, hesitated. What if it's a trap? His brow furrowed with worry, casting a shadow over his already pale face. The haunted woods were alive around them, every sound heavy with foreboding. It's the only way, Sarah replied, more to convince herself than him. They were breathing in the dark, swallowed by shadows that seemed to dance between the trees, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching as they neared the spring, The air shifted. It felt thick and electric, tinged with a metallic taste that made her entire body tense. The faint glow ahead intensified, revealing a glistening pool that pulsed like a heartbeat, surrounded by sinister rocks. Mist rose from it like ghostly fingers beckoning them closer. "Mom." Lily's voice trembled as she pointed at the edge of the water. Figures began to materialize in the mist, twisted faces with hollow eyes and mouths gaping in silent screams. Sarah's heart raced, and the weight of the moment crashed over her shoulders. Each face seemed familiar, akin to the desperate souls ever stuck in her memory, a gallery of anguish. "What are they?" Danny whispered, a chilling realization creeping into his voice. "They look like past victims," Sarah said, realization dawning painfully. "We need to escape." But Lily's feet wouldn't budge, and neither would Danny's. "Mom, look. They're trying to tell us something." Danny took a step closer, as if the water had an invisible pull. "They're trapped. Don't. Come back," Sarah shouted, panic shooting through her veins. Danny held his flashlight, but its beam flickered uncertainly, as if afraid of the truth that lay before them. The faces squirmed. Pleading eyes locked onto them, drawing Sarah closer, tugging at her heart, promising understanding resolution. Then, as if sensing their fear, the figures began to whisper as one, words floating on the damp air like smoke. "Secrets buried deep reveal, to be free no," Sarah cried, but already she felt the weight of their pain reaching for her. The dark shadows that loomed behind them started creeping forward, their bodies stretching, twisting, consuming the space. "We can't go back. We have to face it," Danny urged, his face a mask of determination mixed with fear. But Sarah knew they risked everything stepping into that pool. "Mommy?" Lily's voice broke her thoughts, gently pulling her back to the present. "What if we have to tell them? What if we can help them?" Maybe. Sarah let the word hang, drifting through the fog of despair. She was torn between saving her children and facing the agonizing truths that had haunted her for years. They had to make a decision before the whispers turned into shrieks. Suddenly, the tremors of the earth beneath her feet intensified, vibrating with raw energy. The flickering light brightened, casting shadows that twisted into shapes far worse than before. "We have to do something," Danny shouted, stepping closer to the water's edge, drawn as if by a gravitational force. "No." In that moment, a clamor of voices erupted, echoing a warning. Just then, the pool surged violently, sending waves lapping hungrily at their feet, swirling with darkness as the figures became more frantic. "Help us. Reveal what you hold." Sarah's heart plummeted. Time was slipping through her fingers. The night was dizzying, filled with torment and terror, and they were on the cusp of unleashing what should have been kept buried. Gathering her courage, she whispered, "What do we have to lose?" The moment hung, heavy like a pendulum swinging between hope and horror. As they stood at the edge of the unknown, the chilling question lingered. Would the truth free them or doom them to join the whispers forever? With a deep breath, she prepared to step forward. But first they had to decide if they could bear the weight of the secrets that awaited them. The ground shuddered underfoot, pulsing with the energy of something malicious. Sarah's pulse quickened as the chilling anticipation seeped into her bones. "We have to move," she urged, but her voice cracked, barely piercing the thick fog of dread that surrounded them. The brightening light from the spring flickered like a warning, dark shadows lagging behind them, whispering promises of despair. "Mom, I can hear them," Lily whispered, a perfect mix of wonder and horror dancing in her wide eyes. They were too close to the water. The pulsing glow warmed her little face while shadows flickered, fighting for dominance. She took a hesitant step forward, her small hand slipping from Sarah's grip. "Don't," Sarah shouted, lunging forward, fear igniting her adrenaline. But it was too late. Lily's foot crossed the boundary, met the water's edge, and a ferocious wave converged, pulling her in. Sarah's heart froze, her scream swallowed by a cacophony of desperate voices. "Help us reveal what you hold," they urged, a mantra dripping with anguish. "Lily!" Danny screamed, his face pale, eyes wide. He lunged too. It was instinct. Sarah could feel the horror bubbling, twisting in her stomach. She was torn between saving her daughter and the terrible truth the figures were demanding. There was no time. With a deep breath, she hoped to ignore the whispers clawing at her sanity. "We can't help them, Danny. We cannot. But as Danny reached the water, shadows crawled from the depths. Their forms elongated, twisting like serpents, grasping at his ankles. Danny, come back, Sarah shouted. He didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the figures emerging as the mist cleared. They were closer now, their hollow eyes pleading, voices whispering sweet nothingness masked as hope. Free us. She felt their pain almost as if it were hers, weighing down her heart, pulling her into their dark abyss. Danny, please. Her voice echoed through the night, desperation overwhelming her. The air shifted again, thickening with palpable terror. We must know. His voice wavered, desperate yet curious. Mom, if we don't, we'll never know. Know what? Sarah shouted, grounding herself in her fear. What will we gain? Whatever lies beneath that surface isn't just a secret, it's a curse. Lily's little hand gripped Danny's, and for a moment, they stood at the edge of a fragile line separating safety from the horror lurking beneath. The spring roared, sending icy water splashing over their feet, and suddenly the figures were rushing forward, their faces morphing into grotesque masks, mouths opening in silent screams. I just want to go home, Lily cried. The sight was enough to snap the last thread of Sarah's resolve. We can't stay here. She grabbed Danny and Lily, pulling them back with every ounce of strength. But the shadows fought back, pulling, dragging, taunting them. Reveal, reveal, they hissed, and the chorus swelled in a frenzy. Join us. They were ensnared. Danny flinched, torn between despair and curiosity, glancing back at the pit of despair with a sleepless anguish in his eyes. What if we're the key? He whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos surrounding them. In that moment, everything froze. The air thickened, and the ground trembled. Sarah could feel her world constricting like a noose. Would they risk it all to find out what lay beneath? With grim determination, Sarah pulled them closer, her heart a war drum pounding through her chest. The truth was bearing down on them, its weight nearly unbearable. We'll go together. Whatever it takes, we face it as one. No one gets left behind. In unison, they turned to the spring, hearts racing, breath shallow, teetering on the brink of the unknown. As the atmosphere crackled around them with charged tension, Sarah stood resolute, gripping her children tightly. But even as they prepared to confront the darkness, an ear-splitting roar reverberated around them, rising from the depths of the cursed spring, echoing like a beast awakened. Shadows writhed in eager anticipation, and the figures surged forward, mouths stretching into wide, wicked grins. And just as they were drawn into the inevitable confrontation, a haunting voice sliced through the noise, whispering, discover the truth or succumb to the dark. What revelations awaited them in the depths? Would they unleash the horrors hidden in the pool or find a way to escape the shadows forever? The roar from the spring hung in the air like a death knell, chilling in its resonance. Sarah's heart raced, pounding so loudly she could barely hear the sinister whispers swirling around them. Mom, we need to go. Lily tugged on her sleeve, her eyes wide with terror that mirrored Sarah's own. No, Danny insisted, his gaze still locked on the dark figures, swaying like reeds in a storm. What if there's something we can do? We could help them. Help them? They're not asking for help, they're pleading for a sacrifice. Sarah snapped, pulling Lily closer, desperation clawing her throat. We need to get away from here. But the shadows tugged at Danny, pulling him toward the water's edge. Join us. They hissed in unison, their voices entwined like barbed wire. The words wrapped around his mind, enticing yet filled with dread. He looked back at Sarah, uncertainty warring with the hope ignited by the ghostly figures. Danny, don't listen. Lily begged, shaking. They're lying. Sarah's stomach twisted as she felt the ground beneath them pulse again, urging them to submit. Ignoring that urge took every ounce of willpower she had. We want to be part of your game, she shouted at the figures, her voice sharp as glass. The figures lunged forward, their forms coalescing into something more solid, more menacing. Each step sent tremors through the earth, making the air throb. A darkness began to seep into the edges of Sarah's vision, threatening to suffocate her resolve. Mom, Danny's voice broke, pulling her focus back. I think they want something we can give. There's a secret in the spring. It has to be connected. The wild idea gripped her like a vice. What if revealing the truth could free them? The urge to dive into the darkness was magnetic, urging her to step closer. But with each passing second, Sarah could feel the shadows gaining power, pulling at her children, feeding off their fear and uncertainty. "No," Sarah roared, her voice trembling but fierce. "I want to let them take you. We stand together." As if in response to her defiance, the shadows surged forward, their hands outstretched, ready to claim their prize. The figures transformed into twisted faces, each a mask of torment and despair. "Reveal the truth," they cried, the air thick with malice. Danny, still torn, took a half-step closer. What if they know something we don't?" "Mom, we could know," Sarah interrupted, panic boiling inside her. "We are not bargaining with this evil. Their traps dressed as sirens, luring us in with promises of answers." The air grew colder, a biting chill that threatened to freeze her resolve. Shadows began slithering around her legs, slick as oil. With a surge of adrenaline, she hurled herself forward, grabbing Danny's arm. "Come on." But the shadows wrapped around him, refusing to let go. They were relentless, a tempest of despair. "You cannot escape what you do not understand," they screamed, their voices in agonizing harmony. "Mom, it feels like they know me." Danny's voice trembled. "Get away from him," Sarah shouted, her fists clenched. With a primal scream, she yanked Danny closer, tears of fury and defiance streaming down her face. "We're leaving." In that moment of frantic urgency, the ground began to shake more violently. The spring's surface erupted, water shooting high into the air, sparkling like shards of glass before crashing down. The figures faltered, eyes widening in surprise. Their hold loosened just enough for Sarah to pull her children back. The ground roared, threatening to swallow them whole as the voices crescendoed in agony. "Reveal the truth. Join us." As they stumbled back, the chaos surged again, the shadows growing ever more desperate. The figures wailed in unison, their cries dissonant yet pleading. Then, from the shadows behind, Sarah saw something flicker, a glimmer of light hidden beneath the darkened water. It pulsed, rhythmic as a heartbeat, calling to her in a language she didn't understand. Her instincts screamed to run, but there was no escaping the hold of the shadows. Would they choose to unveil the curse bound to that pulse? Were they stepping toward salvation or deeper into an abyss? With a heavy heart, Sarah stood her ground, the weight of her decision bearing down hard. The answers beckoned, but what would it cost them to unearth the dreadful truth? As the last words of the shadows faded into the chaos, they awaited her choice: fight or surrender what lay beneath the surface after all. The truth was lurking, and it was desperate to be discovered. Would the cost be freedom or despair? The bright pulse beneath the surface of the spring flickered like a dying star, igniting a strange duality within Sarah, both dread and a burning desire for answers. She felt it beckon them closer, whispering promises wrapped in silken threads. "Mom, please." Lily's soft voice broke through her thoughts, trembling as she clung to Sarah's side. "Hold on to me," Sarah hissed, her grip tightening. The shadows writhed, their wails merging into a discordant symphony that filled the air with despair. Each note resonated deep within her, twisting her gut and numbing her limbs. Danny stepped back, his eyes darting between his sister and the mesmerizing light. "I don't think they're all bad, Danny, no?" Sarah barked, a sense of urgency rushing through her. "They want something we can't give." Panic surged through her veins as she pulled him back. "We have to go now." But the shadows closed in, the cool tendrils wrapping tighter, suffocating her resolve. Her heart threatened to explode as another violent tremor shook the ground. Everything felt alive, pulsating with an insatiable thirst for their fear. The figures stood taller now, their faces shifting into grotesque masks of pain and longing. "Join us," they echoed, voices clawing through the air with unnatural force. "Your choice is upon you. Reveal the truth." A distorted scream erupted from deep within Sarah, a primal sound that resonated with fury and denial. "No, I want to let you claim my family." Suddenly, the light beneath the water intensified, casting eerie reflections over Danny's face. "What if it's the key?" he whispered, hope trembling in his voice. "What if it helps us understand?" The shadows screamed louder, fury erupting, tearing at the thin veil of Sarah's will. A surge of terror pierced her soul. "We're not doing this. You're not taking him," she cried, wrenching Danny back. But the shadows pulsed forward, an undulating wave of darkness hungry for despair. A chilling wind rushed around them, carrying scents of decay and despair. Sarah felt its icy grip wrapping around her heart, whispering doubts and fear, dragging them both closer to the unfathomable truth in the spring. She fought against it, heart racing, memories of candlelit nights and laughter flooding her mind. Not my children. The light erupted from the surface, casting everything in a blinding glow. With a fierce cry, Sarah charged into the water, hands reaching for the pulsing light. "Mom, wait!" Lily screamed, horrified. In that moment, a whirlwind of voices spiraled around her, rising to an unbearable crescendo. "Join us," reveal the truth. The cold water lashed against her skin like barbed wire, but the light burned warm, promising answers. She grasped for it, fingers brushing against something solid lurking beneath. "What is happening?" Danny's voice fractured with fear, eyes wide as he struggled against the grasping darkness. "Stay with me," Sarah shouted, her voice half lost in the gale of cries that enveloped them, intertwining their fears and regrets. Then, she felt it, something ancient and alive, a heartbeat echoing against her palm, and every scream around her fell silent. The figures recoiled, eyes widening in horror. "No, you shouldn't know." A wave crashed over her, swallowing her whole, dragging her deeper into the abyss. In that instant, time stood still. The darkness swirled wildly, but the light pulsed steadily, steady like a drum. She needed to know what lay beneath, to unearth the truth. But would it free them? Would it consume them instead, drawing them into an eternal darkness? The last whispers of the figures faded, leaving only the sound of her frantic heartbeat in a cosmic void. Sarah's mind raced with questions, the air now heavy and stale, thick with the scent of wet earth and secrets. What was the truth that the shadows feared so deeply? And would revealing it cost them everything? In that moment, the stakes escalated, and Sarah sensed the weight of their fate lurking in the darkness, waiting for the unveiling of a secret too horrific to imagine. Would she find the strength to confront it, or would she lose everything she loved in the pursuit of an answer that could shatter them? The light flickered one last time, before she plunged into the depths, leaving the surface far behind. The darkness enveloped Sarah, wrapping tighter and tighter as she descended. Panic clawed at her throat, choking her with each passing second. Her lungs screamed for air as she fought to remain calm, focusing on the pulsing light just a few feet away. But it was no ordinary light. There was an allure to it that felt almost alive, a haunting siren call. She stretched her hand forward, fingers brushing against something slick and warm. The heartbeat beneath was a resonance she couldn't ignore, merging with the frantic rhythm of her own heart. It thrummed in her ears, drowning out the memories of laughter and warmth. Instead, all that filled her mind was an image of shadows, morphing together in a dance of despair. "What is this place?" she thought, feeling panic surge again. The ground beneath her feet felt like liquid glass, quaking with energy. She couldn't lose herself to this abyss. Just as she steadied her resolve, tendrils of darkness swept around her, lashing like angry serpents. They pulled at her limbs, dragging her deeper into the shadows. "Let go! Let go!" she screamed, her voice reverberating in the thick water. But the shadows tightened their grip, a chorus of whispers erupting around her. To know is to join. To understand is to be consumed. Amidst the chaos, she glimpsed figures emerging from the depths, flesh melting into dark forms, their eyes dull with an eternal hunger. They reached for her, fingers clawing through the water. "No," she cried, kicking against their grasp. Each moment felt stretched and time-trapped, as if eternity was watching, waiting for her to make a choice. And then she saw it, a face amidst the shadows. It was a woman, eyes wide with terror, mouth moving but no sound escaping. Something flickered deep within her gaze, a familiar spark. It sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. "Mom." It was just a whisper, a fading echo of her own name. Lily, the name ripped through her throat as she spun in the direction of the surface, the image of her daughter flooding her mind. With newfound strength, she bellowed, "Danny." "Lily." The darkness recoiled slightly, startled, just long enough for her to push against it and surge upwards. But as she rose, the shadows lunged forward, snapping at her heels, hissing ominous warnings. You cannot escape the truth. You will pay suddenly. Her hands broke the surface. The cold air burned her lungs as she gasped for breath, and the warm glow above spotlighted her and the children sprawled on the bank. "Mom," Danny shouted, streaks of worry etched on his face. But before she could answer, the water behind her began to writhe, twisting violently. A dark wave reared up, summoning the figures from beneath the surface, shrieking in unison. "You have seen. You cannot unsee." Sarah stumbled back, panic bubbling in her throat. "What do you want from us?" Her words came out a frantic plea, a desperate grasp at understanding. In that moment, one figure stepped forward, its visage more defined than the others. "There are secrets buried deep, truths twisted in the darkness you sought them. Now you will face what you have uncovered." The tension hung heavy in the air. Sarah's heart raced as the figure extended an arm, beckoning her closer. She felt as if the ground might split open beneath her feet. Then everything fell silent, the air crystallizing with tension. The shadows loomed ominous, drawing their haunting conclusion around them. Would she succumb to their demands? Or would the truth demand a sacrifice too heavy to bear? With her heart pounding, Sarah prepared to fight, but realized the shadows lurking behind her. Would they swallow her whole, or had she unknowingly stepped too far into a dark world from which there was no return? The question lingered in the silence, heavy and oppressive. Who would remain if the truth came to light? The darkness pulsed like a living thing, swirling around Sarah in chaotic waves. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony that was impossible to ignore. Join us, each echo tugged at her mind, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. She looked back at Danny and Lily, their terrified faces twisted with fear and confusion. "Run," she screamed, her voice hoarse, but the shadows silenced her, wrapping around her like cold, steel chains. The figures that loomed over them glimmered with malice and promises, probing for the secret she'd inadvertently uncovered. "Mom, help us," Danny shrieked, trying to pull Lily away from the edge of the bank. They were perilously close. The shadows writhed as if hungry for what they desired most, her children. "No." Sarah lunged instinctively, the desperation igniting her strength. But the shadow figure blocked her way, its face devoid of features, yet somehow expressing grotesque glee. "You cannot save them. They are part of the truth that binds you. Sarah, embrace it." The pulsing light she once perceived as safe flickered uncertainly, trembling like a candle in a storm. She grasped at the fleeting sensation, a beacon of hope. "I want to let you take them." With a sudden roar that vibrated through her chest, she leaped toward her children. The shadows shrieked in rage, tangling around her feet, pulling her back. The shadows hissed, delivering their threats through teeth both serrated and unseen. "You will suffer." As she strove against their grasp, a thought pierced through the madness. If they wanted the truth, perhaps she could wield it. Gathering all her courage, Sarah screamed, "The truth resides in our blood." The darkness hesitated, momentarily frozen by her declaration. Beneath her determination, she felt the shadows quiver, as if responding to her desperate declaration. The figures recoiled slightly, searching their own abyss for meaning. "What have you done?" The lead figure rasped, its voice clawing at air like a low growl. She felt it in her bones, the ancestral connection, the echoes of generations lost, but not forgotten. Memories of her mother's warnings, her grandmother's tales of shadowy forces lurking, flooded her mind. Every story hinted at a colossal price for digging too deeply, but she needed to protect her children. Darkness swelled again. This time, the shadows didn't rush her. They coiled around her heart, and in an instant, she could see every horrifying secret concealed in the depths, betrayals of the past, curses unbroken, lives sacrificed. "They cannot have you. Not like this," she screamed. A stark clarity slipped through her troubled mind. She refused to be just another victim. For a moment, Danny and Lily stared wide-eyed at her conviction. "Trust me," she shouted, believing it with every fiber of her being. Together, with one synchronized breath, she yanked her children closer, feeling their warmth fight the cold grasp of the shadows. The figures howled, as if her defiance unleashed their true form. The light above pulsed, blinding her for an instant, but in that moment of vulnerability, a branch snagged her ankle, pulling her down. "No, no." Danny cried as she stumbled backward. The shadows surged around him, and the air crackled with intensity. Mom! He reached for her, his small hand slipping through the darkness, but she barely managed to grasp his fingertips. Everything else faded: the warmth, the laughter, and the world she recognized. All that remained was the suffocating chill of the shadows that drew closer. In an instant, clarity struck her once more. The truth was their only hope. "You'll have to face me first," Sarah shouted defiantly, the words echoing into the void. Just as the darkness lunged, she understood. The shadows wanted her to join their embrace, to relinquish her will to become part of the horrors forever. But she wouldn't let that happen. Not today. And as she braced for what was to come, a piercing scream erupted from the darkness itself, shaking the very essence of reality. What truly waited for her on the other side? What sacrifices would the truth demand? From them all? The darkness surged around them, twisting and writhing like a living beast, but Sarah stood tall, desperate, and resolute. "You'll have to face me first," she roared, feeling an ancient power thrumming in her veins. The shadows recoiled, as if her defiance had unleashed a force they hadn't expected. "Reveal the truth, join us," they hissed again, their voices a dissonant melody filled with anguish and fury. Sarah lifted her chin, eyes narrowing at the grotesque figures. "You don't own us. We will not be part of your twisted game." In that moment, the tension erupted, breaking the chains of fear that strangled her voice. A blinding light burst forth from the spring, illuminating the chaos surrounding her. The figures shrieked, hands stretching out towards the light, their ghastly faces warped in anger and despair. "No, you must join us." With her heart hammering, Sarah turned to Danny and Lily, who were clutching each other, wide-eyed with terror. "We're going to fight back. On the count of 3, we'll face this together," she urged, her fingers grazing their shoulders, grounding them in the moment. "Okay, Mom," Danny nodded, searching her gaze for strength. "We're ready." Sarah felt the warmth of their determination ignite a fire in her gut. 1, 2, 3. Together, they stepped toward the spring, hand in hand, challenging the dark figures who loomed like hungry wolves. "Join us," they hissed again, pushing against the light that radiated from Sarah's heart. The shadows recoiled, sputtering in disbelief. They had underestimated the bond of a mother's love and the strength of family. "In our blood lies the truth and the power to break your curse," she yelled, her voice cutting through the darkness like a knife. She focused on the figures, each face a depiction of suffering and loss. "We are not afraid of the past. We forge our own future." With that declaration, the air crackled around them, filled with energy, and the pulsing light blazed brighter. The shadowy figures froze, their malicious charm faltering under the fervor of unity and love. "What is this?" The lead figure seethed, twisting its features into a mask of rage. "It's our truth," Danny chimed in, fear mingling with newfound courage. "And it's ours to tell. Together," Lily added, her voice adding a sweet strength to the mix. Suddenly, the ground quaked beneath them, as if the earth was caught in the throes of a battle between light and dark. The water in the spring roared, surging toward the sky, transforming into brilliant tendrils of light that danced around Sarah and her children. It felt electric, warm against their skin, a promise that offered salvation against the tormenting shadows. "Release us," the figures howled, scrambling back, their forms flickering and distorting. "Not until the truth is revived," Sarah screamed. Together, with hearts pounding and voices blending, they shouted, "We will not succumb." The light erupted in a blinding flash, enveloping everything. And in that moment, Sarah envisioned the memories buried deep, the family stories that had been silenced, the pain etched into the family tree, bloomed before her. With each sorrow unveiled, a bright pulse resonated through her, filling her veins with power, shattering the darkness around them. But the shadows didn't go gentle. They lunged forward, attempting to grasp at their last hope. "We will take what is yours. We will claim your fear," they snarled, closing in. "Never," she roared. "We are stronger." With a fierce determination, the family joined hands, forming an impenetrable force, standing against the darkness. The light from the spring radiated, blasting forth waves of purity, flooding the forest with warmth and illuminated the shadows, revealing their true forms, lost spirits bound by pain, trauma twisting their features into horrifying masks. "If you seek freedom, you must share your weight," Sarah gasped, her heart breaking for the souls trapped in the whispers of despair. "Tell your stories. Show us your pain so we can release you." The air thickened, and one by one, the figures began to weep, their transparent forms trembling in the suffocating grip of their shackles. "We were bound by secrets," one cried, its face softened for the first time. "Let us go," another pleaded. "Together then," Sarah urged, "reveal the truth, and we'll free you from these chains." In unison, they took a deep breath and began to recount their stories, the air trembling with sadness and solace. With each tale shared, the shadows receded, slowly unraveling the heavy darkness that cloaked the forest. Sarah felt a surge of power in their shared moment. The light pulsed harder, each heartbeat creating ripples through the air, unfurling absurdity into destiny. The shadows began to thin, enlightening the haunted glades of Whispering Springs, and for the first time, hope flickered against despair. As the last of the dark figures released their burdens, the wailing ceased, replaced by silence that held promise. "Thank you," the lead figure murmured softly. "Your truth has set us free." And with that, they dissolved under the shimmering light. Exhausted but lifted by the weight of a release, Sarah, Danny, and Lily collapsed in relief, the shadows fully retreating into the night. The spring glowed like a beacon, its surface now calm and inviting, reflecting not darkness, but newfound joy. They stood together, breathless but unified. "Did we really do that?" Danny whispered, skepticism laced with awe. "I think we faced the shadows of our story," Sarah replied, a tear rolling down her cheek, feeling the warmth of their shared victory. Lily beamed up at them, light bursting forth from her eyes. "And we're free." As dawn broke, the woods echoed with pure sunlight, dawn spilling across the horizon. Whispering Springs was alive and free, the cursed secrets of the past left to dissolve into the gentle breeze. They walked back towards the cabin, feeling lighter, ready to carve out new memories, unburdened by the shadows once cast over their lives. But as they stepped away, a breath of wind rustled through the trees behind them, a soft whisper echoing through the leaves. "Until the next secret calls, let it come," Sarah declared, feeling oddly hopeful, her heart brimming with limitless possibilities. They had faced darkness together and prevailed. Now, wrapped in the warmth of love and truth, they took their first steps forward, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that await. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the magic alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible ending. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.